Hey guys, it's M4J here, and welcome back to Global Ventures here on Planet Coaster. Bit of a recap. So I talked last episode about there being an episode coming up in which there were technical difficulties. Don't need to worry about that anymore because I loaded that video file into my editing software and the whole thing was stuttered. Basically, the technical difficulties I had during the stream was frame rate issues. Well, at least I think it was frame rate issues. Basically, the game, for me, it wasn't freezing me playing it, but on the stream, the stream was constantly freezing, so it would be stuck on the same frame for like a minute, and then it would skip on to, I don't know, 100 frames after that, and it was stuck on that for a minute, and so on and so on. And I thought that was just me streaming it, so I went on to my editing software, loaded the video in, assuming that the video itself would have been fine, and it turns out it might have actually been an issue with OBS. Because the footage was freezing even in my editing software, which isn't great, and it's actually doing it again here as well. I think this stream might have actually started the same in terms of the frame rate issues, and then I did go and fix it. Well, I say fix it, I went onto OBS and edited some settings, and it seemed to have done the trick because this was a 2-hour live stream, so I'm pretty sure if it was still not working at this point, I'd have actually gone back and fixed it, or just abandoned the stream. Anyway, trees and rocks is what we're going to be talking about today. So the stream that is now forever lost to history was basically me placing all the trees and the rocks that you can see on the screen now. Overall, really happy with it. Particularly as the end of last episode, the hills just were bare, absolutely nothing on it apart from the ride structures. Now they've got trees. I'm going to stop saying because it's annoying me, never mind you guys. I nearly did it again. Trees and rocks have been placed on the hillsides now so that the hills look a little bit more like a forest, first and foremost, because the name of the area is Heart of the Forest. Excuse me. And also, I've done it again. I'm just gonna, yeah. I keep trying to stop myself from doing it. It's such an impulsive thing to do. I did it just saying that as well. I've placed trees and rocks. That's what I wanted to say. This is me extending the railway. The Somerset Hills. Well, I don't actually know what to call it because originally it was the Somerset Hills Railroad and it was going to circle the park. However, in my M4J universe, there is a Somerset Hills Railway, and it's part of my train simulator series, and the terminus, one of the terminus stations of that route is right outside Global Ventures. Therefore, it doesn't really make sense to have two railways with the same name. So this might just be called the Global Railroad or something like that, some weird magical mystical name to imply the fact that it kind of circles the globe, in the fact that just by circling the park you visit lots of different countries along the way. Something like that. I don't know. But this is me building the site of the Heart of the Forest station, and I had to go and check with the previous stations to find out whether I'd built it the right length or not. I think I had at this point. I sort of went and double checked. There's a nice little freeze frame there of Crazy Taxi. You're probably wondering what I'm talking about watching this back, because I do know that in my preview window it sometimes freezes, whereas the actual video doesn't. So I talk about it being frozen and things like that, and you guys are probably sitting watching thinking, what's he talking about? It's not frozen at all. It could well be. I don't know. I just don't know at this point. The station building for Heart of the Forest is very much based on the one at Welcome Plaza at the front of the park. And to be honest, I think all the stations are going to end up being built in that style, but themed depending on what land they're in. So the one at the entrance is quite a modest building, because the entrance plaza to the park is kind of like a fairy tale village type thing. So there is a castle archway over the entrance to the queue for the railway. But besides that, all the buildings are pretty, as I say, modest in design. And that reflects well in the station design. Legends of the Frontier, the station hasn't been built yet because of space constraint reasons, and because I've actually rebuilt that area a couple of times since I placed the track. So I will go back and finish that at some point. And then this is the third station on the route, the third of 4 stations. There will be one more, but again, I haven't quite 100% decided where that's going to be yet, so don't quote me on that or ask me about it, because I won't be able to answer it at this point. I will be able to in the near future, I'm sure. But this is Heart of the Forest station building, and again, it's quite a minimalist type design. It's a bit bigger than the one at the entrance, but it is designed to look like a woodland wayside halt kind of railway station. So there's nothing extravagant or overdone about it. It's a pretty, as I say, minimalist design, but I'm happy with it. I'm really happy with it, and the way that the queue's been integrated and the exit path, it all looks really good. I'm very happy with it. And the fact is, when I was building this on stream, I had some friends in the chat helping me with the design, you know, offering feedback and things like that. So overall, it was a really good stream. It was one of my better Planet Coaster streams, I would say, because it's the first time in a long time where I felt like I was doing the right thing and heading in the right direction. There are times with this game, like I said last episode, I love this game and I hate this game. There are times where I'm building and I think this is not going to work, this looks awful, and I might have to revisit it 2 or 3 times. One thing I never do is give up, and I know there are some Planet Coaster players that do just give up, and they use the excuse of I've just got nothing creative to do at the moment, and that's, I've said this before in videos, that's kind of the point. If you force yourself to be creative, sure, you won't do your best work, but if you force yourself to do something creative and you just get through that session, you might end up building something that with a couple of tweaks here or there ends up being better than what you would have built had you been creative. And I find that a lot in my plays of this game. There's a lot of rides and buildings and all kinds of things where I've not been happy with it when I've initially finished, and I've just gone back and made little changes here or there. Sometimes I might look at it for a while, as in I'll just sit at my desktop and stare at the screen and just think, what do I like about it, what do I not like about it, focus on those points, go back and edit things if I absolutely have to, and then it ends up being good. And that's my advice to most Planet Coaster players, is force yourself through the first session and then revisit it. Don't just give up, don't delete everything you've done, because it's salvageable. Unlike my video from the stream that didn't work, this is actually salvageable, and you can actually go through and make it so that it looks nice. And that's kind of what ended up happening with a lot of my building in the Legend of the Frontier section, particularly Bandito. The track I wasn't particularly happy with at the start, and I will always use Bandito as an example because I think that's the coaster that I've revisited the most in all aspects: track design, building design, scenery, everything. I've gone back to that ride about 10, 11, 12 times and just reworked things, and eventually I end up with something that I'm really happy with. The other piece of advice I would give is distract yourself whilst you're doing it. So if you're really struggling to build something that looks nice, put some music on, put a TV show on, put a film on, whatever it might be, and just distract yourself, and you'll find you end up doing good work that way as well. It's a trick that I used when I was doing my university work, particularly when I was writing my dissertation. I'd put some music on, or I'd put Netflix on, and I'd write 1,000 words without even realizing it. It's a tactic that works for me. I can't guarantee it'll work for everybody, but it worked for me, and that's kind of what matters. It's an individual thing. So, you know, if I was struggling to build something, I'd do something that would then help me. If you guys are struggling, do something that helps you, and you know, it works. But yeah, let's talk about what's going on screen. So the building itself, it's asymmetrical. I think there's something quite nice about asymmetry. I know a lot of people like symmetrical things, and they like things to be uniform in design. I'm actually the opposite. I used to be that person. I used to like things to be perfectly symmetrical, perfectly square, all that kind of thing. Whereas now I actually look for things that are intentionally asymmetrical or slightly offset, because that's realistic. You know, this would have been a building that would have been built with a base design, so the high roofed section would have just been built, and then over time the building might have been extended out one side, and they didn't want to build it as a 2-floor extension, so they just built a ground floor extension, and then they would have extended it on the other side, and then the roof design would have been built to match the extension, and before you know it, you've got an asymmetrical building. But it's a realistic asymmetrical building. And so that's kind of why I went with that. It doesn't just look like a building that's been built to fit into a theme park. It actually looks like the building was built first and then the park was built around it, which is really what this whole project is supposed to be. Each area is supposed to feel like a lived-in environment. It's not supposed to feel like a tourist attraction. It's not supposed to feel like a theme park. There are theme park attractions within it, but it's meant to feel like a town. Or in the case of Heart of the Forest, it's meant to feel like a small woodland village. Legend of the Frontier, it's supposed to feel like a gold rush town. City of the Future, it's supposed to feel like a modern, futuristic, technology-filled metropolis, and so on and so forth. So, you know, I feel like I've hit the target quite well. There will, of course, be tweaks. There will always be tweaks. Very much like Disneyland, this park will never be finished, kind of thing. Because I'd get bored if I just sat and watched it all the time. I like doing that, but, you know, I like building as well. So at this point, I've gone back to the railway track. Now I'm happy with the layout of the railway. I was actually going through and raising the land up, basically building a berm around the outside of the park. Not to rip off Disney necessarily, but just so that the track isn't built on stilts around the outside. Because I do want there to be areas of the park where the track goes above the pathway, and I do want there to be areas of the park where the path goes above the trackway. So, you know, that means you are going to have hills and undulations and all that kind of thing. The track is going to have to be raised up at certain points, and it's also going to have to be built in cuttings at certain points. The cuttings I haven't got round to yet. I will do in the near future, and hopefully I can do a good job of them, because the landscaping in this game is nice. It's a nice, easy to use tool. Building paths within that landscaping is an absolute nightmare. It's one of my least favourite features about the game, I would say, is the way in which you have to build paths. And you can see it here. I managed to get it to work pretty early on, which I was quite surprised by. But trying to build the queue line to the railway in Heart of the Forest was an absolute pain in the neck. Like the worst kind of frustration of why is it not working. But like I said, ultimately I did get it to work, and in fact I think that's the second draft. This might end up being the version that I stuck with. It's kind of like, in my head, I don't like stairs in theme parks. I think stairs in theme parks are not useful. I know that some rides have disability access through the exit pathways, or through a pathway in which there is ramps or a lift or an elevator, depending on where you're from, that kind of thing. And accessibility is a big component of my theme park designs. I don't want it to feel like people in wheelchairs or people with mobility issues, I don't want them to feel like they have to go a different way to everybody else to experience the same ride. I want the whole park to be an all-inclusive environment, and I know that's not easy to implement, and I know it's not the same for everybody. But if you sort of start off with that idea, occasionally you might have to break protocol, but majority of the time you do end up achieving the target. So for me, apart from where absolutely necessary, I have avoided using all stairways. There are no stairs in Global Ventures. There is one instance I can think of currently where there are stairs, but there won't be stairs in the near future because they will be removed, and that is on the dark ride in Legend of the Frontier. And the reason I say it's going to be removed soon is because the ride is actually being relocated to a different part of that area. There could end up being stairs still, because the way I've built the loading platform for that ride, stairs are a component of that. But the way I've built the queue path and the exit path basically next to each other, instead of going up and over the ride like you currently have to do to actually get on the ride, people with mobility issues will actually just go through a little gateway between the entrance and exit paths and get on the ride that way. So they don't miss out on the experience of the queue line and the immersive theming, because that's a big part of it. And I mean, certain theme parks I've been to in the UK where FastPass is a thing, you do actually miss out on quite a lot of theming and quite a lot of the theme park experience by going through a FastPass line. Disney are very good at this actually. They make sure that their fast pass lines run parallel to the standby lines so that you do get the same experience. But there are some parks where maybe for space reasons or just they hadn't thought it through at the time, the fast pass lines do actually bypass a lot of the theming elements, which can, as I say, limit the experience. So that's another factor that I did want to try and avoid, which is another reason why there are no stairs in most of my queue lines and exit paths, so that you do actually get to experience the ride in its entirety and not just sort of get a light version of the ride because you have to go through a different entrance to everybody else. That's kind of the theory and the thought behind it. But you know, comment below, let me know what you guys think. Do you factor these things in when you're building your parks, or do you just go with, you know, build a ride, build a queue, build an exit, open the ride kind of thing? Yeah, let me know in the comments, because it's a very interesting topic, I feel, and it is one that the Realism Brigade are big on. They do focus a lot on their queue lines, and they do a very good job of it. So it is a very important factor in theme park design, and I do think it is one that's not necessarily thought through all the time. There are some brilliant queue lines that I've seen videos of, and again, Disney are the king when it comes to this kind of thing, but there are some shockingly bad ones as well, and you know, some of them are in the UK. There are some where, for budgetary reasons, they've perhaps not maintained them as well as they could have done, so they are falling apart. And there are some that just weren't that great to begin with. It's just one of those things, I suppose. But yeah, let's talk about trees and rocks and stuff again. I think I might re-edit the track on Forest Falls again in a minute. I know I built the station building, and you can see I've built the queue line and the exit path here as well. By the end of this episode, there will be a station building over Forest Falls. There will also be a on-ride photo booth at the end. Now, the on-ride photos aren't actually a thing in the game yet, but you never know, they might add them in the future. I feel like it is something that could be added into the game in the future. Rollercoaster Tycoon 3 had quite a nifty feature. It did get a bit irritating after a while, but essentially it was you'd build an on-ride photo section on your coasters, and then if you customized your peeps, which were the guests in your park. I don't actually know what they're called in Planet Coaster, whether they're just called guests or whether they have a buzzword name. But if you customized your peeps in Rollercoaster Tycoon 3, so if you created a group of people, gave them names, customized what they look like, and then they came to your park and rode the rides, every time they went through an on-ride photo section, a snapshot would be taken of them and it would be saved to a folder on your computer, which meant that you could go through and look at your guests enjoying your park, essentially, which I thought was a really neat feature. They could do something like that on Planet Coaster as well. They've done this weird Instagram filter type thing for the latest update, which perhaps suggests that they are considering allowing that sort of thing in the future with on-ride photos, which, you know, I think is a pretty cool feature if they do bring that in. Being able to customize your own guests and basically create yourself and watch you walk around your park, that would be a really nice feature, I feel. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so I've built an on-ride photo booth for Wildwood, which was the first one where I've actually completely built it. There is also one for Forest Falls. There will also be one added to Manic Miner and also to Bandito. Now, Bandito technically has the space already built. There's a gift shop type building at the exit of the ride, and that will be completely finished when the station building and everything there is rebuilt to a standard that I'm actually happy with. Likewise with Manic Miner, originally the exit to that was going to share a gift shop with the exit to the Dark Ride, but since the Dark Ride's being moved to the opposite side of the area, that will no longer be possible. So I will have to go through and rebuild the exit to Manic Miner, which again I wasn't particularly happy with at the time because of slopes and paths. So it just gives me an excuse to go back and do that again properly. So this is me building the station building to Forest Falls. It is a very simple design. There's nothing snazzy about it. There's nothing particularly impressive about it. It just does the job. It keeps people sheltered as they get onto the ride, protects all the ride systems and things like that from getting wet if it rains, or for getting snowed on, or you know, just something to protect from the elements essentially. Very simple design, pitched roof in the center, which you can see me building now. And one of my tricks when I'm building here is I look at what other buildings might be built close by. So in this case, there's the station building, which I'm finishing off now, and then there's the on-ride photo booth as well, which is going to be built next to the exit. So I actually built them as one building. And I say building in inverted commas because they're part of the same in-game building, but they are obviously two separate buildings. I think there might actually be an adjoining wall that does connect them together. But besides that, they are technically separate buildings. And yeah, I'm happy with it. I'm really happy with it. It's very rare that I build something that I'm happy with immediately. But this is one of those rare examples. And I think it's because at this point I'd built a station building over at the railway. I'd also built Wildwood's building, not last stream but the stream before, the last episode in this case. So overall I think I was getting into a rhythm of building these sort of little station buildings. I've been to a few theme parks around the world. I've seen how station buildings are built and themed. Some of them are really intricately themed. My favourite, I think, in the UK is Vampire's loading area at Chessington, because it really does. It's not the most intricately themed or anything like that, but the atmosphere in there, the dark lighting with the different coloured spotlights shining down, and then the animatronic organist playing away on the organ. I forgot what the instrument was then. I just called him an organist and forgot what the name of the instrument he was playing. The organist playing the organ, the music itself as well. It really does feel like the inside of a vampire's lair, I suppose is the right word. So it does a very good job. It is my favourite station loading platform, whatever you want to call it. And the music of Vampire is some of my favourite music in all theme parks as well, because again it really conjures up that atmosphere. I suppose my least favourite station loading platform is Dragon's Fury, also at Chessington, because it is essentially it's a flat roof on stilts. Really, there's no theming in there. There's no theming at all around Dragon's Fury. There's a couple of singed trees, and again I put that in inverted commas. They basically took some trees, painted them black, cut the branches off, and say that, that's the Dragon's Fury for you. Dragon got annoyed and turned the trees to charcoal. Apart from that, there's next to no theming in that area at all. The ride itself is pretty much the theming. So that's my least favourite. And the fact they're both in the same park as well is quite something. Toon Blaster as well has a very nice themed queue and station area. What was Dragon Falls is now Tiger Rock, I think. Again, it's been like 4 years since I went to Chessington. It's been 4 years since I went to a theme park. That's the bit I can't believe. I think someone who likes theme parks as much as I do would actually go to these places a little bit more often. But yeah, it's been 4 years since I went to a theme park. And the last theme park I went to was Alton Towers. And again there, apart from Nemesis, I mean Nemesis is a case in itself for how to theme a queue line and a station, because the station is the theming. That's it. It's an all-in-one. It's not like there's a station with some theming inside. The station is the Nemesis monster. It is the theming. That's quite impressive. You've then got ones like Air, that's now Galactica, which, again, there isn't actually much theming there. It's supposedly in an oasis, or at least it was when it was Air. I'm not quite sure how they've themed that these days. And then there's that one weird ring over the first big drop of Galactica. But besides that, there's nothing really to suggest that there's theming. What am I building? Oh, yeah. So, I have an idea for a third ride in Heart of the Forest. There will be more rides, but this is kind of like the third marquee ride, and it will be another roller coaster, which will technically take the coaster count in this area up to 3, although I count it as 2 plus a water ride. the type of coaster that I want to build in the game isn't yet available. So this is kind of a placeholder. That's not necessarily to say that the coaster that I will be building will be on the same plot of land as this ride. This ride could end up being rethemed and positioned somewhere else within the park. But it's, again, it's one of my bugbears with the theme park industry in real life is these, I'm trying to remember what they're called. Is it Sky Wheel? Hang on, let me see if I can... I need to remember what the type of coaster is called. I know it's built by Morrison. I don't know. Right. Where is it? The Sky Loop. That's what it's called. Yeah. So the Sky Loop, in its most basic form, is, and I believe that this version is the XT150 I'm referring to. It goes up a vertical lift hill, gets to the top, does a barrel roll into a half loop vertical drop into the station, goes back up the lift hill, stops, and then gets slowly lowered back down into the station. That's a Sky Loop. It's boring as hell. That is not a roller coaster in my opinion. It runs on rails, sure. Does it coast? Barely. Barely, really. I mean, the majority of it is controlled by magnets or by chains or by braking systems, which is not really what a roller coaster is about. And you can see this is me building it here and just thinking, I don't like this. One of my favourite ones is the version that they have in Madrid. I think it's Abismo. I think that's what it's called. Let me have a look really quickly. Yeah. So, Parc de Atracciones de Madrid. My pronunciation is terrible. I haven't spoken Spanish for about 7 years. It has a roller coaster called Abismo. It's the only existing version of an XT450 model, which, as well as going up into the double barrel rolls, into the snake dive, it then actually has another bit of track, which is what I've built this ride based on, but with my own sort of M4J twist. So Abismo, after it does the half loop drop into the vertical drop, instead of just going straight back into the station, it actually drops next to the station, goes up into another element, which I think is just an overbank turn, and then goes past the station again, does another overbank turn, and then hits the brakes and returns to the station, which makes it a little bit more interesting. My issue with this in real life is there's so many of them. It's just like the Vekoma Boomerang. There's one successful version of it that's put somewhere, and suddenly every theme park in the world wants one. And it's not just these ones. The Sky Loops are the ones with lift hills, essentially. There are also the ones that are built by... let me find out. I think it's Premier Rides. Yes, which is the launched version. So it's basically the exact same track layout, but instead of going up a lift hill, it's launched. And again, you go up through the element and down again. And there's so many of them. So many of them. It's the most boring type of coaster ever. And I know that they do it because it's cheap to install and it takes up minimal space. But I always think big parks like Six Flags, Busch Gardens, Disney, you know, parks like that, big family type parks, shouldn't be investing in rides that really go on boardwalks and you know, parks like that where the budget's not necessarily the highest and the space constraints are most definitely there. I tend to think of something like a Sky Loop going into a park like Blackpool where space really is a premium. And I'm not saying bad things about Blackpool by suggesting that. I'm saying, you know, because they've got so little space to build rides, it's actually a very thrilling ride in a very small footprint, which is perfect. That's exactly what Blackpool does, really. They build very, very, very good roller coasters in very small areas of land. I think Blackpool still holds the record, actually, for the most amusement park rides in a certain amount of space. I can't remember what the amount of space is, but it's so densely packed. So yeah, I wanted to build this roller coaster as a placeholder, but I wanted it to be different to all the others. So as you can see, once you go down the big first drop, I actually put a batwing element or a bow tie, I think is the other name for it, and then a 0G roll, and then an Immelman, which then goes into a brake section which runs you back into the loading platform. That for me makes this ride so much nicer. It's still not perfect, I still don't like it, and I will still be removing it as soon as the coaster model that I am waiting for gets put into the game. But for the time being, it's called Buzzsaw. It's going to be set in a sawmill, as I'm sure you can work out. There is actually a roller coaster in Australia called Buzzsaw, which is set in a sawmill. So it's not, I mean, it's not ripping off the idea, but the idea has already existed in the past. But it's just a nice little placeholder. It's a fun little coaster, I suppose. I've never ridden a Skyloop. I have ridden G-Force at Drayton Manor, which uses the same kind of lift hill mechanism. And actually the same kind of first drop as well, except it's just one continuous loop rather than the barrel rolls in the centre. And it was alright. I did feel like I was going to fall out of my seat. It's the first coaster I've ridden on that's got inversions and only a lap bar. So I wasn't a fan of that. I actually prefer over-the-shoulder restraints when there's inversions. Just for it, my own peace of mind, essentially. It makes me feel safer. There's nothing wrong with lap bars, they work perfectly fine. Again, if they didn't, they wouldn't be allowed. But yeah, my own sort of paranoia, I prefer having over-the-shoulder restraints. Comfortable ones, mind, not really hard plastic or anything like that. In fact, my project when I was at college was to redesign over-the-shoulder restraints to make them both more comfortable and easier to maintain. Which, if there's any coaster manufacturers out there that want to get in touch, I'll be sure to pass on my ideas to you. But yeah, overall, the park is starting to come together a lot nicer. You might have noticed that it's only the left-hand side of the park from the entrance that's been completed so far. I am tempted to, once I've completed Heart of the Forest and done all my sort of alterations to Legend of the Frontier and finished off City of the Future, of course, I am tempted to do like a test opening of the park just to see how it functions, and then sort of go from there, build the right-hand side of the park as seasonal additions. So like next year, open a new area, the year after that open a new area, just to again fit in with the realms of realism. This is a POV of Forest Falls. I have rebuilt it between last episode and this, and I'm still not happy with it, so I will be rebuilding it again, so I won't dwell on this too much. What I will do though is start wrapping up the episode, because we are coming to the end of the footage. So thank you very much guys for watching. I will get into the rhythm of things in the future, because I'm going from memory at the moment. It is being a bit tricky, so stick with me. Next week's episode will be a lot better, I promise. Until then though, don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you're enjoying the series, drop some comments down below with ideas for future episodes. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support, and until next time, I will see you soon.